Sandor Earl. Probably not the biggest name in the game. He's probably not the most naturally talented. He's not the guy coaches are fighting to sign. He's just a young player trying to forge a career in the NRL. The young winger started his career at the Roosters in 2009 before moving to the Penrith Panthers in 2010, where he overcame a double shoulder reconstruction to reach the best form of his career at the Canberra Raiders last year. Move forward to August 2013, and Sandor's name has now become synonymous with one of the biggest scandals in Australian sport. Sandor has become the first player served with an infraction notice from the NRL, being charged with the use of peptide CJC 1295, which is a banned substance, and trafficking as well. For the first time exclusively to the Footy Show, Sandor Earl breaks his silence on the events that led to his charges and his suspension from the NRL. His story is compelling as he opens up about the process involved with the acquiring and administration of these substances and gives us an insight into the inner workings of his relationship with the controversial sports scientist Stephen Dank. We brought in one of the best, of course, the great Carl Stefanovic, for this interview, who sat down with a very candid Sandor Earl last week. Here we go.
So how's life?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting better day by day. Hopefully I've come to a head with a few things and looking to move on in my life soon, so.
What do you think people out there think of you?
Possibly a drug cheat, someone that's disgraced the game. Yeah, that's probably a few comments that I've heard.
Are you a drug cheat?
No. I don't think so. I mean, what I've gone through and how it's happened, I wouldn't call myself a drug cheat, and I don't think I obtained any further performance or anything like that classifies me as a drug cheat. Let's
go back to where this all began. Tell me where you were playing, where you were at physically in the mid-2011.
I knew in 2010 that I needed a double shoulder reconstruction, and it's something that I wasn't open to doing. I was off contract next year and on minimal money, and I thought I'd take a chance and see if I could come out with a bang at the opening of the season and hopefully get a new contract and then look to do my shoulders. But you know, that wasn't the case. So it was pretty bad. My ability on the field went down a lot from my injuries, and come mid-2011 I had to receive a double shoulder reconstruction, and it's probably one of the hardest, it's definitely one of the hardest things I've had to go through, and wouldn't wish it upon anyone.
Were you desperate? Your attitude, was it make or break for you?
It seemed like that at the time, yeah.
You thought it was the end of the road?
I thought it was the end of the road, but it was definitely a tough road ahead.
When did you first meet with Stephen Dank, and who introduced you to him?
I met with Stephen Dank at the facility where we train, and I was introduced to him by a strength and conditioning coach. Not on any great capacity, just that I might be worth having a chat to him about going forward and helping out with my shoulders.
In what capacity did you think he was working under at the Panthers?
My best recollection of him is a sports scientist. He did tell me his credentials, which included working at Manly, the Sharks, the Gold Coast Suns at the time he'd mentioned. So, I mean, someone like that, who's, I believe, is an employee at the club, is, in my opinion, a reputable sports scientist and someone that's worked at other clubs. To me, whatever he had to say in a time of, I guess, need was, I was listening and I was interested.
How did other people in positions of power at the Panthers describe Stephen Dank's role at the club at the time?
Well, in terms of people with position of power, it would only be the strength and conditioning staff that I spoke to. The sports scientist that we'd employed at the club, Matt Ryan, and our strength and conditioning coach, Carl Jennings, they described him as a support person in that department. So essentially, a sports scientist consulting with the club. They described that to the team, that he was helping with our programs.
Did you have another conversation with him after that initial conversation? How did things run?
Yeah, so let's say if that was at the start of the week, that first meet, within 3 days or 4 days, he'd come back into training and we had a further conversation. From there, he'd looked at my blood test, which the whole team had taken previously, and he went through my scans of my injuries, which I brought in for him. And then that proceeded to lead to a conversation of treatments that he could provide.
In what capacity would those treatments take place?
Yeah, so it basically started off with him describing, he went a bit more in depth at his work at other clubs, and he was telling me of things that he can do to reduce my injury time by 3 months, which is, of course, very appealing to me. That conversation also included the talk of amino acid proteins or peptides, and in turn, he sort of said the ways it can be done, the ways it can be used, success he's had before, and that's what he'd like to do with me.
What did he say about your treatment specifically, if you can recall, about this accelerated treatment? What was going to be involved with that?
Injections of peptides. That would in turn accelerate my recovery time, and the time mentioned was 3 months.
Did he discuss at that point the legalities?
Oh, 100%. That was obviously a question of mine, which I raised quite early, and this wasn't a conversation of these things won't show up in tests. This was a conversation of these are not banned substances. I would never use banned substances. And I mean, he's been employed by other NRL clubs doing the same things. I had to assume that why would this person be employed to hand out illegal substances? It would make no sense.
So you asked him whether it was legal?
Oh,
what
yeah.
was going to transpire?
More than once. And by saying, did I ask him if it was illegal? No, I asked him, can I get in trouble for this? Is this a banned substance? And he said no, and he went through his process with WADA and how he goes about things, and he assured me on a number of occasions that nothing was banned.
And from your perspective, at that point, you thought that Penrith were fully aware of whatever he was doing?
Well, yeah. There's no doubt in my mind that the coach and the coaching staff knew that he was at training and at the club, and I mean, I can't comment on anyone's contract, so I'd have to assume that he was an employer.
When the word peptide is mentioned, I think a lot of people go, hang on a second, the alarm bells start ringing, even with the mention of peptide. You'd raised it.
Yeah, well, the alarm bells start ringing in 2013.
Yeah, back then it wasn't.
There's no way anyone knew what a peptide was in 2011. I certainly didn't.
You had no idea what a peptide was?
No way. And the conversation didn't start off with peptides. Not that, again, that wouldn't have raised alarm bells to me because I had no idea what it was. But the talk of amino acid proteins, I know what they are. In my mind, I take them every day. And when he's drawing up on a whiteboard, you know, pictures of molecules and things like that, well, I mean, what am I supposed to think?
You have to ask, don't you, what are these things? Are they illegal?
Yeah, and I did.
And you did.
There's no doubt in my mind. A number of times.
So how did the treatment start? Where did the treatment take place?
And he told me that he wanted to set up the process to happen with a person called Dr. Ijaz Khan, who he said he'd worked with previously. I met him at a clinic in Mascot, which he worked in at some capacity, which was a injury care clinic, which he described to me that he had some sort of part ownership in, which was like a facility for rehabilitation for people. I met him there, and he told me about Dr. Ijaz Khan and that we were going out to see him again, possibly a few days later in Cabramatta.
That's off reservation. That's away from the Panthers. This is at a private surgery.
Yeah, a private clinic. Yeah. I mean, there were always patients there when I went in, but yeah, it's away from the club.
At that point, do you think, well, hang on a second, this can't be right if it's off campus, off reservation, as they say?
Now it's probably brought up that there was a conversation back with Dank in the consultation rooms at Penrith, and this was a conversation of him saying, look, we should probably not be telling everyone about this, we should keep it between ourselves. Now obviously I've had conversations and that pictures me to be a bit naive, but when he explains to me that we're going to see a doctor, if we talk to the club doctor about it, he'd probably be a bit worried. All club doctors are, he explained to me. They don't see anything out of the box. They see it as a bit of a worry, bit too much for them to handle. So after that spiel, you know, I kind of took that on board and thought, yeah, well, he makes a good point. So going from that, although he did take me to a clinic off-site, you know, if he was taking me to his mate in the back shed of his house, I'm starting to ask questions. He's taking me to a legitimate doctor whose job is to work on injury, rehab and management. So, I mean, it paints a picture that, you know, I can probably trust the situation at this stage.